Hello everyone and welcome back. We are finally at Transcoding for Premiere Projects Lesson 2. We're going to wrap this up today. Thank you, first of all, everyone that, I made Lesson 1 2 years ago, and ever since then, it's been crazy. I got a new place, I got a dog, things at work have been crazy, and despite all that, you guys have been constantly reminding me to come back and to make a part 2. And this guy saw that 7 months ago I made a comment and got to it today. So in the last tutorial, we went through and talked about how to do everything in Premiere. And I think this one's going to be a big step up for everyone. I think things are a whole lot easier using DaVinci Resolve, which is most of what this project is going to be in, if not all of it. So if you don't know already, DaVinci Resolve is free, and there is a paid version. And in the paid version, you can basically just do really advanced exports like IMF deliverables, HDR, and you get the noise reduction tool. But 99% of the tools are completely free. And it's actually really great for editing in now. I don't use it personally, but I know that the tools are all there now, basically, and I think it's really great. So if you don't have it, you're going to need it for this tutorial, so go on over to Blackmagic support and download DaVinci Resolve. I think we're in version 16 right now. I am specifically on 16.1. I think this is still maybe like one of the beta versions. I can't remember. But I've been using this version for a while, and it works great. So get that downloaded, and once you open up Resolve, you should be greeted with something like this, in which case you just double click Untitled Project to create a new one. And what we want to do is, before anything else, we want to make sure our real names are set up. And real names are basically just metadata, which are really good for helping you keep track of footage when you're going through the online process. And I always like to make sure this is selected. It's normally going to be unchecked, but you want to check under General Options, Assist using real names from the source clip file name. In some cases, I believe you use embedding in source clip. I've always found that source clip file name always does the job for me. So select that, and basically what it does is, if you're coming from Avid doing transcodes, it's the same thing as, I believe, when you do Command D and you duplicate the clip name to the real name when you're creating your transcodes. And it's really important that you do this in Resolve before you start importing media, or especially before you start creating timelines. It can kind of screw up the process if you do it too late. So I always just do it as soon as I open a project. I wish there was a way to make it a default setting. I don't think there is. And of course, if you know a way, in the comments, let me know. So this is pretty, if you're coming from Premiere and you've never used Resolve, this is pretty standard. This is your media browser. This is how you search for clips. This is your bin page. The only difference is Resolve uses different pages. So you have your media page, your edit page, and here's your bins again. You have VFX over here, color. We really only need to worry about media and deliver today. So deliver is basically where we're going to be exporting. It's basically a built-in version of Media Encoder. It's just where you send everything for exports, and you can queue them all up on one side, and it's great. So what I'm going to do is I could drag in all of my footage like so and just drag it in here, but I actually like to use this way. I just grab one clip and I drag it here into the media browser, and it locates. There's my face. There's my friend's face. There's me again. This is embarrassing. Cut around it. I don't want to see myself. There's my friend. Great. Here's all the footage. So it just basically like navigates for you in the media browser. And I like to use the media browser just because it's a little easier to sort my bins first. So I don't remember when this footage was shot, so I'm just going to create a bin in here with today's date. It's September 15th, so 2020-09-15. Whatever date your footage was shot in, that's what you would make it. And you'll notice I have 3 camera bins here. So the A cam is some MXF media, the B cam is this must be Canon media. So you'll notice this has like a folder for each clip. And we'll go over some really cool functions that Resolve has. I think it's really great, for especially for this tutorial, to go over that kind of stuff. And then the CCam, which is some Blackmagic footage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my ACam and bring that, click and drag here. So you'll notice sometimes when you click and drag this stuff in with the ACam, it'll ask if you want to change the frame rate. I typically change it knowing that most of my footage is 2398, and I know that this footage is 2398, so I'm going to select change. So then I can bring in my Bcam two ways. So you'll notice the first way is if I just click and drag it in to this bin, it creates that bin for me automatically, and it keeps the folder structure of each clip. So if I click on the source of Bcam, it does what's up here, and it creates a folder for each piece of footage. Now, if I just real quick delete that, I'm going to remove it. And let's say I add a bin and I manually add Bcam. And then instead of clicking and dragging it here to create a new bin and the folders, if you click and drag it into this window, it just detects media instead of folders, and it brings it in like that. I'm going to, for the sake of explaining a great function of Resolve, I'm gonna bring it in with all the folders. And I'll show you in a second. Real quick, I'm just gonna bring in the last one, which is the CCam. I'm gonna bring that in like so. So like I said, this is pretty straightforward. If you click on a bin, you see its contents, right? And normally, if you're in Premiere or something, you just expand it, and it works pretty straightforward, right? So if you click on Bcam, you get the source, and then you can double click, or you can click here to go into the bin. A great thing about Resolve is if you select multiple ones of these, you can see the media inside it. So it's almost as if I just brought the clips in to one bin. So it combines just media. You don't see any of the bins or the folders or anything like that. What's great is I can see the A and B cam, the B and C cam together. I can see all the media together as if, it was one bin. I think this is a really great way. In some cases when you're in Premiere, you can open multiple bins and do it like that, but I really like how this is set up. I think it's absolutely genius that I can, especially for this case where we're going to be separating different aspect ratios. This is just a fantastic way to do all this. So what I'm going to do real quick is get started on creating multiple timelines. One thing you need to understand before we do the next step is that Resolve handles everything as one aspect ratio or one resolution. So in Premiere, you can create multiple sequences, and each sequence can be its own frame rate. It can be its own resolution. In Resolve, everything follows kind of like the Avid way. Your project setting relates to your footage. It can bring in any and all kind of media just about, but everything is resorted to when you go to File, Project Settings. It's all going to be this frame rate. And by the way, your frame rate is locked once you do this. You have to start a new project and copy everything over once you create a project, which sounds like an impedance, but once you get used to this workflow, it's actually pretty intuitive. It keeps you from making mistakes. So right now we have everything as 1920 by 1080. And you can change the resolution as you go. You just can't change the timeline frame rate. So most of our footage is 16 by 9. We do have some stuff that is 2K, and I can never remember the aspect ratio of 2K, so I'm going to put it on the screen after I Google it in post-production for this. But I'm just going to say 2K a lot, and I'll put it on screen when I find the aspect ratio. We do have a bunch of stuff that is also multiple audio channels, so we have some stuff that's 8 channel and some that's 2. What we're just going to do is we don't really have to worry about separating things out by audio channels like we did in Premiere. You can just sort of leave those as is, and Resolve is going to handle that. You'll see later. And the same thing goes for frames per second. If I had some slow motion footage, that was source side, it was 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. Resolve handles that for you as well in the deliver page. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and act like I'm setting this up for an AE to do syncing or for an editor to start working. When we render these out, we want to render each reel, each camera as its own folder once we, export these as proxies. So I'm going to create a timeline for each camera. So right here is another picture of me. We have a UHD file, which is basically 16:9. It's the same as 1920 by 1080. So the rest of these, though, are 4096 by 2160. Insert aspect ratio on screen. I'm just going to take this UHD file and do create new timeline using selected clips. I'm going to call it ACAM 16:9. I'm going to create that. And then I'm going to take all the 4K footage. There's me again, wonderful, from like 5 years ago. And we're going to call it ACAM 2K because, again, I can't remember. Insert aspect ratio. So now we have all our footage separated out by the UHD stuff and the 4K stuff. And you'll see, even though the footage is 4096 and UHD, our resolution of the timeline for both of these is 1920 by 1080. That's always going to be locked based on the project. We're going to go over to the BCAM. I'm going to select all these bins so that it just combines everything together. I'm going to select all of it. All of it is 1920 by 1080. I'm going to create a new timeline, call it BCAM 16:9. Same thing for the CCAM. This is all 1920 by 1080. CCAM 16:9. Great. I guess some of you might want to know, how do you apply a LUT to your UHD footage or your masters for when you create a proxy. There are lots of great tutorials out there. I'll just give you a real quick tip. This is some Blackmagic footage. So this is the cinema camera from years ago. So you just select your footage on the media page. You go to 3D LUT, go to Blackmagic Design, and I'll just real quick select Blackmagic Pocket. I'm not sure which one of these. A lot of people like to just use the Arri Log C to Rec 709 because it kind of works for everything. It's a very nice, subtle LUT. So that one works okay. So now we have, in each bin, we have our 16:9, our 2K timelines. So what we can do is we can just hop straight over to the deliver page now after you've applied your LUT. Oh, and before I go to that, real quick, I just want to mention, as you can see here, the real name is here because of that assist function right here. So if you turn that off, you can see the real name is basically just a duplicate of the clip name. Don't do that, though, because you want to keep that on. So once I go to my deliver page, what we want to do is a few key things. If you do render as a single clip, it will just render everything on your timeline as one massive QuickTime. We don't want to do that. We want everything rendering it out, as our specific clips. So first thing to do is individual clips. Next up, this is going to be up to you. If you're using MXF OP1As or Atoms for Avid, go look for another tutorial. There's a really great one out there that I'll put in the description that describes how to make Avid MXFs for dailies. It's really great. Follow it. And even if you're not, if you're an assistant editor, you should definitely watch it just for knowledge sake. But we're just going to go stick with a QuickTime. Obviously, I am on a PC, so I don't have a ProRes codec. I like to use, I found either GoPro Cineform's actually been okay. If you're on a Mac, just use ProRes and do ProRes LT or ProRes Proxy. I've used Cineform. I've used Grass Valley one time. I'm just going to, for this case, I'm going to use DNxHR because I feel like that's what most people would want in a post house. The other thing about these two flavors, you're saying, why aren't you using DNxHD? I've heard so much about that one. DNxHD is great, but you're locked into, you can only use 1080p. You can't select your resolution. You're locked into 1080p, which is fine for this footage. But like I said, if I have the 2K, insert aspect ratio here. If you have 2K footage, you can't make it anything else. it'll just have it'll force the bars onto it. You know, we want it to be a nice scaled aspect ratio. So I do DNxHR. It lets you choose your resolution. And I just typically do like DNxHR SQ. If you want it to be really small, you can do LB to the human eye if you're just using like a regular monitor without, you know, like a third monitor with a full screen. LB should be fine if you want to save space. SQ otherwise is what I normally use. If you do render at source resolution, it will detect what the source resolution is, such as 3840 by 2160, and it will render it. No matter what the clip is, it will render it at source resolution. But in this case, I know that all of this footage is 16:9 aspect ratio because I'm in my CCAM 16:9 timeline here, and here's the drop down for everything. So I'm going to keep it at 1920 by 1080. If you want to see even more space, do 1280 by 720 HD. You shouldn't need to do anything in the advanced settings. Everything should be good there. I do auto for all that. For audio, remember how we talked about channels needing to be the same? Remember how also in Premiere we had to separate everything out one at a time for each audio channel? In this one, look at that. This is the magic button where I think this is a million times better than Premiere. Same as source. Boom, it's going to detect if it's 2 channels, 8 channels, 6 channels, 16 channels, 50 channels. It'll detect it for you. You don't have to worry about it. The other thing I do is just 24-bit depth, because that's what most cameras should be recording to. So 24-bit depth, same as source, linear PCM. You're going to be all set from there. You don't have to separate anything else out. File name. You just do source name, and that's going to basically keep it the same source as your original footage. Obviously, the only thing that doesn't carry over is the file extension because we're making these all QuickTime. So if you have MXF media, you want it as MOV so that you can edit nicely without having a whole bunch of pain in the butt stuff going on. Then all you gotta do is click Browse. I'm gonna navigate real quick to a folder. So I'm gonna navigate here. I'm gonna make one called CCAM. I'm gonna select that folder. I'm gonna add it to the queue. I'm not gonna click Start Render yet. I'm gonna go to my BCAM. And again, this is where you select your timelines, 16:9. And everything, again, is all good. For the BCAM, just create the new folder. Add it to here. Select the folder. Add it to the render queue. Go down to the ACAM again. And we're going to just do the ACAM 16:9. We're not going to select the ACAM 2K. Whoop. All right, sorry about that. Every time I went to create a new folder from Browse, it crashed on me. So I just went ahead and made an ACAM folder here. So I'm going to go to ACAM 16:9 specifically, just to point out, I'm not going to my 2K timeline yet. So I'm going here with my stupid face. I'm going to Browse, and I'm going to the ACAM folder and adding it to there. So now we've got our 3 timelines, which are all 16:9, and we can basically render these out before we get to the 2K stuff. So this is going to take a little while, so I'm just going to start render, and we're going to fast forward through it. Okay, so that's all done. So now all we got to do is, the only thing left to render is the 2K insert aspect ratio, please. And as you can see, our 2K stuff is it's got these bars on it because right now our project is set to 1920 by 1080. So all you got to do is this, again, this is 4096 by 2160. So half of that, which is typically what you would use for your proxies, you would use half size, is 2048 by 1080 DCI. And this goes for just about any proxies you're using. And it's up to you, but I typically just go by half. So just go to project settings, master settings, and change it to 2048 by 1080 DCI. That's what I would do in this case. Click save. And you're going to notice those bars go away and everything looks a whole lot better, right? So now also when we go over here, Everything is the same, including our QuickTime, our DNxHR, but it changed from 1928 by 1080 to 2048 by 1080 DCI for us. It detected that it probably wants us to render this as the timeline resolution. So that's why I like to do it instead of the source resolution and then just changing it here. If you change your timeline as your project setting to the size that you want it to render as, it makes things just a little bit quicker. Also, you'll notice just that when you bring in footage that's larger than the timeline, Resolve just automatically scales it down to fit within the frame. So it's basically like scale to frame size in Premiere. So now I'm just going to browse, and I'm also going to send this to the ACAM. You don't need to create another folder for your separate resolutions. That's up to you. If you want to just keep it extra organized or something like that, by all means, go for it. Otherwise, you can just leave it the same. Just going to double check. We have channels, same as source file name. I'm going to add to the render queue, and again, just start the render. Okay, so that's basically all done. So now you can go back into Premiere, and I'm just going to open up Premiere real quick and create a new project. While this is loading up, I just want to go over one more time the reason I really like using this workflow, besides what we're about to do, is when we're in Resolve, again, you don't need to worry about separating things out by the source channels. You only need to do by your aspect ratio, and you can just set everything up to be here in your timelines, and it's pretty fast. Also, in my opinion, Resolve renders typically a lot faster, especially since I'm using a computer with like a good GPU in it. I think it just typically comes out faster than Media Encoder. And also, it's not really mentioned. You'll notice when you're in the video tab, it doesn't say anything about frame rate, and that's because when you do individual clips, not only does it detect when you have same as source for audio channels, it detects the frame rate for you, so it's just going to keep that the same as long as you have individual clips selected. If you have single clip, you can change it to like something else, but again, it renders everything, so what's the point of that? That's for when you're exporting your finals. So everything has the same frame rate and source audio channel, and then of course things like timecoder baked in and all that. So I'm just going to open up Premiere real quick. Just going to create like a blank project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the source footage. And there's two ways you can do this. I'm going to import the footage. I'm just going to bring all of it in real quick. Get that usual message for all the XML files and all that. And what I want to do is I'm just going to bring in, I know that a lot of people think, all right, so the only way that this function works when you right-click your footage and you do create proxies, the only way you can do that is if you use Media Encoder. But I think a lot of people just skip over the simple fact that if you do attach proxies, you can choose where this is coming from. So I'm just going to do file name and media start. I'm going to do attach. I'm going to navigate to where we made today's proxies in DaVinci Resolve. Here's all our stuff, right? It finds everything that matches. And check this out. If we bring this into the timeline, you can see the LUTs applied here because the toggle proxy is on. And look at that. You don't have to use Media Encoder, guys. You can use other stuff. You can use Resolve. Use Resolve. I'm telling you. Don't use Media Encoder. It's going to screw you up somewhere along the line. I'm glad I showed you in that first tutorial in case you don't have any other option. But, I guess that's Premiere's intended way to do it. Use Resolve. It's going to make your life so much easier. And you can do the vice versa of this. You can import the proxies first. So let me just delete all this, right? Let me bring in the proxies, proxies. I'll bring in just the CCAM again because you guys know that's the one with the LUT on it. I'll bring in just the CCAM. So here's the proxies, right? I'm going to turn off proxy mode real quick. So these are the proxies with all the LUT baked in. So this is the 1920 by 1080 stuff. So I'm going to do right click proxy, and you can reconnect the full resolution media instead. So make sure, again, file name and media starter are selected. I'm going to go to the footage. I'm going to go over to CCAM. You're going to select one of these. And look at that. Toggle the proxies. Boom, you're done. It's a great workflow in my opinion. There's probably a few things such as there might be a faster way to create those two timelines or something for the aspect ratios. And again, this is YouTube. You guys can comment if you have a suggestion. I want to know, because a lot of the stuff I get is from the community coming to me saying thank you for these tutorials, and then they say, by the way, you can also do this. I found this in another tutorial. Let me know and I'll try and combine it. I'll pin your comment, make sure everybody else gets to see it. I hope this helped you guys. I'm sorry it took over 2 years to get it. I know that I was talking about doing, I think, Red Cine X as a part 3. But to be honest, it'll probably take me another 2 years. And there are already really great tutorials out there that tell you how to do Red Cine X. The only thing you got to do is once you export your ProRes files or whatever, you just basically do the same thing in Premiere. You just right click and attach the proxies or vice versa. So check out some tutorials. I think I know a pretty good one that I'll put down in the description for you. I hope this helped. And again, keep this open. If you guys have any suggestion, comments, let me know. I'm still working on, just so everybody knows, an updated assistant editor series for Premiere. What we're looking for is to try and get some footage that everyone can actually download. There would be a price, but I know that there's some classes out there for like $300 or something. This would be like $5 or $10. You get the video series and you get the footage. So it's possibly something that we're working on. Don't know if anybody's interested, but it would be an update on the original assistant editor series that I have here on YouTube. It'd be just a little more advanced. It would go into some nice things that you could do for multicam to make things a little faster and all that stuff. So thanks again, everyone, for showing that you care by commenting and asking for where part 2 was. Really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll have some more stuff coming out in the future.